the end of the month, I looked at our bank balance again. There had been no major expense or emergency, yet the number felt smaller than I expected. I opened the transaction history and slowly scrolled through it. Nothing stood out, only a long trail of small amounts. I started recalling them one by one. Coffee, online orders, extra snacks, and other small costs that always seemed reasonable. None of it felt wrong. Still, it was difficult to see where everything was going, as if the money left without making a sound. My name is Clara, and as we began trying to improve our finances, I realized there was one thing we had never truly understood: where our money was actually going. That morning, I sat down with a notebook and started writing our weekly shopping list. It felt like the same routine I followed every week. The list was simple and easy to follow. There was nothing extra on it and nothing that felt excessive. But when I reached the checkout counter, the total always seemed higher than I expected. I found myself looking at the number for a moment longer. I usually treated it as something normal. It seemed like the kind of thing everyone experienced from time to time. A few days later, Armand picked up some food on his way home from work. It was just a quick stop before coming back. The amount was small on its own. Even so, it still added to spending we had not planned for. Somehow, moments like that kept happening again and again. Looking back, they seemed to appear more often than I realized. I started writing down our daily expenses. Each small purchase found its way onto a simple page beside me. At first, I assumed the problem was hiding inside the bigger expenses. That's where I expected to find the answer. But after looking more closely, it didn't seem to be there. The larger numbers weren't telling the whole story. Instead, the pattern seemed to be spread across everyday moments. It appeared in places I normally wouldn't pay much attention to. A little here, a little there. Each amount felt too small to stand out on its own. None of it felt significant in the moment. Most of it passed by without leaving much of an impression. Then I looked at everything together. The total sat quietly in front of me, and I found myself staring at it for a moment. I slid the spending notes across the table toward Armand. Seeing the pages in someone else's hands made me look at them differently. That night, we stayed at the dining table after Mira had gone to sleep. The house felt quieter than usual. As I looked through the list again, some purchases felt unfamiliar. I quietly admitted that I didn't even remember making several of them. Armand listened without interrupting. Then he gave a small nod. After a moment, he said he had been doing the same thing. His answer was simple and immediate. For the first time, the situation seemed easier to recognize. The pattern felt more visible than before. Sitting there together, I realized the problem wasn't a lack of money. What we were missing was a sense of direction. The days continued as they always had. Nothing on the surface seemed different from before. Mira went to school, Armand headed to work, and I took care of the house. Our routine unfolded the same way it always did. At dinner, we still found reasons to laugh together. The conversation felt light and familiar. We still enjoyed spending time together. Those moments remained an important part of our days, but every time I checked our bank account, the same uneasiness returned. The feeling never stayed away for long. I was not afraid of becoming poor. That was never the thought weighing on me. What unsettled me was not knowing what was really happening. The uncertainty stayed quietly in the back of my mind. That afternoon, Mira sat quietly on the living room floor with her drawing paper. I noticed how focused she looked as she filled the page with colors. When I looked closer, I saw the page covered with colorful boxes. They seemed carefully arranged across the paper. I pointed toward the drawing and asked what it was. The question came naturally as I studied the page. Mira looked up and smiled before answering. Her expression was simple and relaxed. She told me each box represented a job for someone on the team. I glanced back at the drawing as she explained it. Then she said that without a task, people would not know where to go. Her answer sounded straightforward, but I kept listening. I kept looking at her drawing longer than I expected. Somehow, my thoughts drifted back to our money. That night, I opened our family budget again after everyone had settled down. The pages felt familiar, but I looked at them more carefully than usual. As I looked through the numbers, I noticed that all of our income ended up in one place. Everything simply gathered together without much distinction. There were no labels attached to it. There were no clear purposes waiting for those funds either. In the end, it all looked like one large number. Everything seemed blended together on the page. Then a simple thought crossed my mind. I sat quietly with it for a moment. We had always expected our money to work smoothly for our family. We assumed it would naturally find its place. But we had never really given each part a clear role. Looking at the budget, that felt impossible to ignore. After dinner, I asked Armin if we could sit together for a moment. There was something I had been thinking about for days. The conversation was not about having too little money. That was not what stayed on my mind. What I wanted to discuss was where our money was actually headed. I kept returning to that thought. We need to give every dollar a job, I said. The words felt simple as I spoke them aloud. Armand sat quietly for a moment. I could see he was turning the idea over in his mind. Then a small smile appeared on his face. It seemed like something had clicked for him. So our money stops wandering around without a destination, he said. I laughed and told him that was pretty close. The following week, we sat down together and started creating new categories. It felt like a small change in our routine. One category was set aside for emergencies. We quietly gave it a place of its own. Another category was for household bills. It became one more section on the page. We added categories for Mira's education, personal spending, and family recreation. Each one received its own space. The system itself was not complicated. There were no elaborate rules to follow. What mattered was having a clear purpose for each category. That was all we were trying to define. For the first time, we knew where every dollar was supposed to go. The page looked the same, but it felt easier to understand. A few weeks later, our finances had not changed dramatically. The numbers were still modest, even though time had passed. Yet, something else had changed. We felt calmer than we had before. Now, every dollar had a name. Every dollar had a job to do. I learned that financial anxiety does not always come from having too little money. Sometimes it comes from not having enough clarity. The biggest change was not earning more money. It was giving clear purpose to the money we already had. And I still wonder whether every dollar in life truly has a place to go.